Hello and welcome to the BYU Family History Library webinar series. We're glad you could join us today. I'm Bryant and I'll be your host for this webinar. Please make sure your microphones and web cameras are disabled during the presentation to provide for a smooth recording. If you have technical difficulties during the webinar, please use the chat box and I can address your concerns. You are welcome to use the chat box during the webinar for comments and insights. However, all questions will be addressed at the end of the presentation. Our next webinar is next week, Wednesday, the 23rd. Are you related to a famous ancestor with James Tanner? And that'll be at the same time, 5:30 p.m. If you'd like to access a previous webinar, please visit our webinar index on our website or search on our YouTube channel. All of our webinars are recorded and uploaded by the following Monday for your convenience. We also post links to recordings and other updates on our Facebook and Twitter accounts. For today's webinar, we are pleased to hear from Larry Jensen, who will be giving a presentation on using German periodicals and periodical indexes, part 1. And this is part 1 of a 4-part series, and the rest of the parts will be held on the upcoming Saturdays at 3 p.m. Larry Jensen has a Bachelor's of Science from Brigham Young University. He is the author of a genealogical handbook of German research. He is co-author of Maps of the German Empire of 1871 and co-editor of German Genealogical Digest. He retired with 35 years work experience with the Salt Lake Family History Library. And Larry, if you're ready, we'll turn the time over to you.
So I would like to welcome you to a series of lectures on using German periodicals and periodical indexes. This series includes the following 4 lectures. In this first lecture, I will provide some background information about German periodicals and explain how to use the periodical index called der Schlüssel, which means the key. In lecture 2, I'll explain how to use 2 other periodical indexes. One is called Quellenschau für Familienforscher, or the show of sources for family researchers. The other one is called Familiengeschichtliche Quellen, or family history sources. Lecture 3 is understanding locality jurisdictions. By understanding these jurisdictions, it will help you find the records that your ancestors are in. The last lecture is in 3 parts. First, we'll talk about how to search unindexed periodicals. Second, we'll talk about how to use periodicals in the Family History Library catalog. And the last one is how to search for digitized and online periodicals. In this presentation, I will be talking about the use of literally hundreds of German periodicals and the use of the periodical index called der Schlüssel, with the purpose of helping you find ancestors and also extend family lines. Most people are unaware of the fact that there are more people in the United States of German descent than any other nationality. The following statistics are taken from the Statistical Yearbook of the Immigration and Naturalization Service, which first began recording immigrants coming into the United States in 1820. In the 2000 U.S. Census, people were asked to identify up to 5 countries that their ancestors were from. This data was then tabulated on a county and a state basis. Each ancestral country was identified by a color. The color of a county or state was determined by the country that had the highest % of ancestry in it. The color for Germany, that was the color blue. And you can see how extensive it was. This slide shows the predominant country of ancestry for each state. So 23 out of the 50 states were predominantly of German descent. From this census, the statistics from this census indicated that there were more than 50 million people in the United States with German ancestors. This was just under 20% of the total US population. It's interesting to note that Germany today they have 66 million people of German descent, just 16 more million than what we have in the United States. Interestingly enough, back in 1900, a similar census was taken where people were also asked to identify the 5 places where their ancestors were from. The shaded area shows the states that were covered by those of German descent, the highest percentage. So 28 out of the 48 states were of predominantly German descent. When immigrants identified Germany as the country that they were from, they were not referring to the country of Germany as is shown here, the current country of Germany. Germany before 1919, the end of World War I, was much larger. This map shows the German Empire of 1871 that lasted until the end of World War I. It was an empire made up of different kingdoms and duchies and principalities, ruled by kings, dukes, and princes. A major problem facing those trying to trace lines back to Germany has to do with determining the place of birth of an immigrant ancestor. Though many records and resources are available to help determine the place of origin of an ancestor, these are only just a few of them. As you will see from this presentation, knowing the place where your ancestor originated is critical. If you're still trying to determine the place of origin of an ancestor, be sure to check every record you find and never assume that a record won't help. Periodicals are a less known resource for helping determine where an ancestor was from. They also help us find other important information about an ancestor in the area in which they live. So the following is statistical information about periodicals. So how many German periodicals exist? In a study that we began back in 2017 and is ongoing even today, we have identified 604 German periodicals. So how many of these are in this Salt Lake Family History Library? 387, or nearly 2/3 of them. How many of the 604 have been digitized and are online? 193, or nearly 1/3 of them. So are these all of the German periodicals? No. There are many more periodicals published by local societies in cities and towns and communities. The following are examples of 3 of these towns. So these periodicals exist for the towns of Waldorf, Essen, and Freudenstadt. So what areas of the German German Empire do the periodicals cover? Sources shown on the following 1871 German Empire map, extracted from the periodical for the years 1928 through 1931, from the periodical called the Archiv für Sippenforschung, or Archives for Family Research. The following articles were found in the following areas of the German Empire. This map shows the areas of the German Empire where 16 articles have been published from this one periodical. They cover from the north to the south and from the east to the west of the German Empire. And keep in mind, this is only 4 out of over 60 volumes of this periodical. And this periodical is only 1 out of the 604 German periodicals that exist. This is a list of the subjects and records contained in those articles listed on the map, and you can see the wide variety of the type of records and resources that these periodicals contain. I was once asked, how do periodicals that were published in the early 1900s to the present help find ancestors from the 1800s back to the Middle Ages? So shown here are 6 of the articles that were listed on that previous map. They include a citizenship record from 1592 to 1669, a land record that covers 1582, a military muster roll in 1623, a resident record in 1667, a welfare record in 1786, and an immigration record in 1797. So these articles, these 16 articles, well, these 6 articles and all of the others were between 1928 and published up to 1931. So just 4 volumes. So the date of the publication really has nothing to do with the time period or the contents of the articles. So the articles are not just about records, they also include family histories. We have found that family histories are one of the major things published in periodicals. This example is a 6-page chronicle or history of the family Weichel from the town of Troy in Briesen. So if you had an ancestor with the surname Weichel and you were looking for his place of origin, this may be your family and the place or the area where your family was from. There are not only family histories, but also pedigree charts, like this one for the Mackensen family from the town of Losfelde in Hanover, Prussia. Also included in these periodicals are articles that are written to provide information about the family, like this first one that talks about the establishment, meaning, and the distribution of the Bellman surname. Or they are published to help resolve research problems, like this research problem on the Eisen family. And this shows the methodical research procedures to follow to solve that problem. It also explains the effects of laws and historical and cultural events and issues. This one is on the new adoption rights and the problems it makes for family researchers. Many of the periodicals pertain to records that the authors found and used to extend their own family lines. In writing their articles, they didn't just extract the information that pertained to their own family. They extracted the whole record. This article is about the taxes levied on the serfs in the town of Havelberg in 1648 and 49. It is a 9-page article listing everyone in that tax record for that city and for those years. So I've shown you how valuable these articles are that have been published in the German periodicals. Now we need to talk about a dilemma you face in using periodicals. Assuming that you have one or more ancestral families in one of the 604 periodicals it is in. Assuming that, so the questions would be, how would you determine which of the 604 periodicals it is in? And how would you know in which year it is published? And how would you know on which page it was found? So the question is, how do you find your ancestral needles in the periodical haystacks? So to help solve this dilemma, we need to understand how to use 3 important periodical indexes. These indexes include Der Schlüssel, a 9-volume work that indexes 145 periodicals. The Quellenschau for Familienforscher is a 2-volume work that indexes 79 periodicals and more than 900 other German genealogical sources. Then the Familiengeschichtliche Quellen is a 19-volume index, a 19-volume work that indexes 61 periodicals, more than 2,000 other German genealogical sources. The years are highlighted. So the next for these periodical indexes are found in the Salt Lake Public Library, and the following are their call numbers. So all of these periodical indexes are available. Those of you who are who don't live close to the library, can you check in the World Catalog for the closest libraries with the copies of these books? So this chart shows how these periodicals overlap each other. In the left-hand column is the name of the periodical being indexed. In the column to the right of the title is the Family History Library call number for that periodical. The next 3 columns are the periodical indexes. So Der Schlüssel is highlighted in red. The Quellenschau für Familienforscher is highlighted in green, and the Familiengeschichtliche Quellen is highlighted in blue. The years that are highlighted in color show that they overlap one or both of the other indexes. And even though the indexes overlap, They must all be searched because they differ from one another as to what was indexed, as we'll be showing in this presentation. So the first periodical index we'll talk about is der Schlüssel. And I will go into more detail about this periodical index because all three indexes are similar in their format and contents. In the second lecture, when I talk about the other two indexes, I will focus on how they differ. This is the title page of Volume 8 of Der Schlüssel with its bibliographic information. Next, all of the periodicals that are indexed in this Volume 8 are listed with their page number of which they begin. This is followed by a small and a very inadequate list of abbreviations. And next, we have the title page of the first periodical being indexed. Note that only the years from 1976 to 1980 in volumes 42 through 46 of this periodical are indexed in this volume of Der Schlüssel. The periodical Archiv für Zippenforschung actually began in the 1920s. Earlier volumes of this periodical were indexed in earlier volumes of Der Schlüssel. This page is the beginning page of the articles of this periodical. The title of the periodical is listed at the top of each article page. You should not use this title name as a reference because it may be an abbreviated form of the actual title. Here you see on the top left the title page for Archiv für Zippenforschung. And to the right of it is the article page showing the same name for it. On the bottom left is the title page for the Familiengeschichtliche Blätter und Mitteilungen. And to the right of it is the abbreviated form from the article page, Familiengeschichtliche Blätter. So the articles are listed alphabetically according to the name of the author or compiler. The first article in the first periodical being indexed receives the first number, and the numbering continues throughout the entire volume until you come to the last periodical in the last article, which receives the last number. You will notice that there may be multiple articles by authors with the same name. When you come across an article that pertains to your family or the town or area where your ancestor was from, be sure to make note of the author's full name and any information about him. Frequently, the same author will author or co-author other articles found in other periodicals or other volumes of either the same periodical or other periodicals, providing additional information about the same family or locality. After the articles from every periodicals are listed and numbered, you come to the indexes. There are three types of indexes in Der Schlüssel. You have the Quellenschaftsverzeichnis for locality indexes, the Sachverzeichnis for subject indexes, and Namenverzeichnis, a surname index. So we're going to begin with the locality index. The localities are listed alphabetically, followed by a number that pertains to an article number in the front of the volume. For example, the town of Dünzebach has the number 1882 after it. When you turn to the number 1882 in the front of the book, you will see the name of the periodical at the top of the page. So the periodical name here is the Hessische Familienkunde, which tells you that the area this periodical focuses on is the area of Hessen. This may be good if you have reason to believe that your ancestor was from this area. The title of the article tells you that it is about the serf record for the town of Dünzebach for the years 1626 and 1629. This can be important if it includes information about your ancestor, because from 1618 to 1648, the 30 Years' War destroyed many of the church and other records. This may be one of the few records that exist for this town at this time. The year 1975, following the title, is the year the article was published in the periodical. The number 469, following the year, is the page number in that volume in which the article is found. Now, if, for example, you had an ancestor that was from the town of Dünzebach, and he was one of the serfs in that town between 1626 and 1629. And you wanted to look at that article, and you went to the family history library and you found the periodical, the Hessische Familienkunde, over in the book stacks. And then you looked and found the year 1975. So after you found that year, you would then turn to page 469, and there you have the article that would have your ancestor in it. And that's how easy it can be. The locality index for Der Schlüssel includes not only the names of towns and cities, but also names of countries, names of nobility areas, names of government and record areas, names of cultural and topographical areas. In searching local indexes, in their, excuse me, in searching the locality index, you may find entries with a second locality following the name in the index. These are often government locality identifiers and clarifiers. Some of the second names may be abbreviated or have an abbreviation in front of them. Concerning the localities in Germany, the reason why some of them have identifiers or clarifiers is because there's an average of 3 places by the same name in Germany. Take the town of Abendorf, for example. The Myers Gazetteer shows that there are 4 different places by the name of Abendorf in Germany. So which one of these is the one that's in the Der Schlüssel? The abbreviation KR means district of. So in the index, it is saying that Abendorf is in the district of West Prignitz. So which of the 4 Abendorfs belong to the district of West Prignitz? So the very first one does. So there are additional locality identifiers and clarifiers. They are cultural and topographical areas. In this example, the cultural clarifier for the town of Abendorf is identified with the abbreviation of VOGTL, which stands for Folkland. The Folkland is located in the southwest part of the Kingdom of Saxony and was taken over. It was a former nobility area which died out in the late 1590s and was taken over by the Kingdom of Saxony. Even to this day, the towns and the people of this area still refer to themselves as being from the Folkland. Next, we have the town of Annaberg. It has a topographical clarifier identified with the abbreviation ERZGEB, which stands for Erzgebirge. Translated, that means the Ore Mountains. It is also found in the Kingdom of Saxony. It is a range of mountains that borders the Czech Republic today. Now I would like to talk about the subject index in Der Schlüssel. We have already shown the great diversity of subjects that are found in the periodicals. Every social level and type of occupation is identified, from the lowly serf to the skilled and educated and even nobility. Knowing an ancestor's occupation can be helpful, whether it's unique or not. In this subject index, we have the Scharfrichter, which is an occupation. Translated, Scharf means sharp, and Richter means judge. And there was no sharper judge than the axe of an executioner. And Scharfrichter means executioner. This is an occupation that is found everywhere and yet not in every town. It is an occupation that often stays in the same family, generation after generation. It is an occupation that's not just to execute people. Farmers would hire executioners to come over to slaughter their cattle. There is a reference to another name of executioner. It's called the Nachrichter. So the first legal judge sentences a person to be executed. The Nachrichter is the next judge, rather the executioner, that comes after and carries out the executioner. One of the source numbers is 237. This is article number 237. It identifies the executioner families in the city of Kassel, Germany, from 1535 to 1863. So if you were lucky to have an ancestor that was from Kassel, and his father was had the occupation of an executioner, you would be able to trace your family back from 1863 back 328 years to 1535. Now, the last index in Der Schlüssel is the surname index. In looking up the surname Albers, there are several numbers given. When we look up the number 812, it takes us to an article that explains the family relationships found in the area of Ostfriesland. Ostfriesland is a cultural area found in the northwest part of the Prussian province of Hanover that bordered the Netherlands. It is an area where the use of patronymics, where a child receives his father's given name and uses it as his surname. This patronymical naming causes a lot of problems in tracing families. This article explains how to trace families in a patronymical area. I want to go back to the family history of the Weichel family to explain a couple of problems that exist with the locality, subject, and surnames indexes in Der Schlüssel. When you look up a place in the locality index, it doesn't tell you what subject or surnames are listed for it. And when you look up a subject or surname, it doesn't tell you the localities where it's found. The only way to find out this information is by looking up the article for each number. The second problem with the indexes in Der Schlüssel is not apparent when you look up the title of an article, either in the periodical index source or in the article itself. The problem is that only names of localities and subjects listed in the article titles are included in the locality and subject index. And only the surnames listed in the article titles, as well as the names of the authors or compilers, are listed in the surname index. Thus, in the article about the family history of Weichel, the only things indexed are the subject chronicle, the surnames Weichel and Gebhardt, who was the author, and the locality of Treuenbrietzen. So all of the other localities listed within the article, and the surnames listed in the article, and other subjects listed in the article are never indexed. Only those things that are found in the title itself. Now, in spite of the limited indexing of Der Schlüssel, it is full of hidden treasures. Take this 1623 muster roll for the town of Neuruppin in the province of Brandenburg, Prussia. During the 30 Years' War from 1618 to 1648, the area that included Neuruppin suffered the loss and destruction of between 1/3 and 2/3 of the population and their property and records. Neuruppin church records only go back to 1700. The Neuruppin State Archive burned down in 1787. This muster roll should have been destroyed, but somehow it ended up 50 miles away in the Prussian Secret State Archive in Berlin, Germany, where someone found it, extracted it, and then published it in this periodical. This welfare record in Kassel, Germany includes all levels of society, giving names and ages and family relationships. It included the poor, including widows, and elderly former shoemakers, tailors, thatchers, locksmiths, carpenters, butchers, and etc. It included those with medical conditions and those with mental or physical disabilities. And like I say, it gives their ages and shows the family relationships. The last thing that I want to talk about in searching is searching book reviews, which is another source for finding ancestors and extending ancestral lines. Unfortunately, it's a source that often gets overlooked, even by professional genealogists. We counsel researchers to look under every rock and every nook and every cranny. And the book reviews are one of those rocks that need to be looked under. In Volume 8 of Der Schlüssel, a search is made for the surname of Gottscholler, and a number of entries are found. In clicking on number 5 is the entry found in the Archive für Zippenforschung. The year that it was published was 1977 on page 68. This is a book about the inhabitants of Gottschall, including the information about the Gottschaller families. In the entry is the abbreviation of REZ, which stands for Rezension, which means review, as in book review. A check of the World Cat showed copies of this book in 6 different libraries in the world, 5 of which were in Germany, and 1 was in the Salt Lake Family History Library. I have found that beginning in the 1950s and 60s, more and more people were publishing their genealogies and family histories in books, not in periodicals. So this increases the need even more to check the book reviews. One thing you should understand too is that during World War II, many of the records and record repositories were destroyed, but many of those records were extracted and published in genealogical periodicals before the war, and are the only copy of those records that exist today. It is another reason why periodicals are so important. So this concludes the lecture 1 of our series. I hope you will join me this coming Saturday on the 19th at 3:00 p.m. for our next lecture. If you have any questions about today's lecture that we can answer now, I'll be happy to do so. You can also contact me by using my email address below. But before answering the questions and turning it back to Brother Stegman, I would like to express a special thanks to Lorraine Ferguson, who has been our editor and contributor and periodical database manager, and a major part in putting together these lectures. So I'll turn the time back to Bryant so that we could see if there are any questions.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Larry. And if there's any questions from the audience, please post them in the chat box and Larry can answer them for us. It looks like we do have one question from Barb. It says, what was the original purpose and or audience for these periodicals?
The main purpose was to share genealogical research procedures and how to solve research problems, and also to share, for people to share their genealogies, their pedigree charts. This was probably the most important thing. This was the main ability to just share the information that they have. It was not popular when they first began this to publish a book with the genealogy or history.
Great. And we'll wait just another minute to see if anyone has any other questions. If anyone from the audience has questions, please post them in the chat box. We do have a question from Kathy. It says, are German research specialists at the FHL able to help the public with lookups in these periodical indexes?
That I am not aware of, but I do not believe so. They have a lot of missionaries that man the different areas in the library. They do have staff available to assist if it's necessary, but I doubt that they would have time or the ability to do, they would have the ability, but they wouldn't have time to do something like that. There is the option of hiring a researcher who would be familiar with these periodicals and how to use them. And you may have to hire a professional genealogist to do that.
And so someone also asked, will the next part of the series show us how to do this?
Well, the next part is covering the next two, the other 2 periodical indexes, the Quellenschau für Familienforscher and the Familiengeschichtliche Quellen. We, if there's anything that else that we need to cover, we'd be happy to do that. If anyone has a suggestion that they would like me to add to the next lecture, I'd be happy to do that.
Great. And Larry, I don't know if you have a slide with your email on it. I'm not seeing it up right now, Oh, there it is. Perfect.
Sorry.
And there's a schedule for the upcoming webinars as well. And someone asked, where can we watch the webinar again? And we upload the webinars within the next couple days on YouTube and on our website. So you can just watch on our website at fhl.byu.edu. And Julia is asking, can you please re-show the slide with the three main indices?
With the three main indexes?
Yeah.
There they are.
Perfect. And it looks like you got a lot of thank yous in the chat box, Larry.
Well, I hope we hear. If you do have any other questions, feel free to contact me at my email address, jensenlo@burgoyne.com. Oh, and I should mention that if you need any assistance in translating any records, I would be happy if you would email me the document, and I'll see if I can help you.
Great. And it looks like that is all the questions. So thank you so much, Larry.
Okay, I'll turn it back over to you.
Awesome. Let me just share the schedule screen again. Thanks everyone for joining us. Be sure to join us next week. On the 23rd, Are You Related to a Famous Ancestor with James Tanner? And that'll be the same time, Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. And also on Saturday, let me share that schedule again. On Saturday, this Saturday, the 19th, we will be holding part 2 at 3 p.m. And so be sure to join us for part 2 of Larry's webinar. And the following parts will be held on the following Saturdays, excluding October 3rd. So be sure to join us for that. Thank you once again for joining us today, and we hope you have a great day.